Hi, I'm Andy Thayer with the Gay Liberation Network, and with me tonight is Ted Aranda of the Occupy Chicago. This is the Gay Liberation Network on CAN TV, and we're very happy to have Ted here to discuss the conventions, and in particular some actions that are going to be happening here in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. But before we get into all that, I'd just like to point out that if you want to get in touch with the Gay Liberation Network, please check out our website, www.gayliberation.net, and you can get lots of information about what we're up to. And I'd also like to point out that the Gay Liberation Network is involved with an ongoing boycott against the Chick-fil-A restaurant chain, which is notorious for opposing equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. But let's get into tonight's topic. Ted, you got involved with Occupy Chicago. What were some of the issues that motivated you to get involved with Occupy?
Well, I wasn't so much interested in particular issues as the bigger question of getting democracy in this country, because I don't believe it's a democracy at all. So Occupy, I found, was one organization that practiced democracy and advocated democracy, the rule of the 99% basically, and against the what I would call the oligarchy that we have right now. So that's what motivated me to join.
Well, and democracy is itself an issue, but it's a bridge to all the other issues. Right. If you want to deal with the issue of the 1% ripoffs in the financial sector, or the war funding, or the housing crisis, or any number of other things.
There's so many, yeah.
You can't get there without some basic democracy. Exactly. Now, I mentioned at the start of the show here, we've got some protests coming up against the conventions. There, of course, were the protests against the Republican National Convention in Florida this past week. What is motivating the protests here against the Obama National Campaign headquarters?
Well, Obama is the president. He's the ruler of this country, the titular ruler of this country. So he's the face of the government. And that's why, and the government is the entity that is carrying on so many bad policies on the environment, in the economy, wars all over the place. Obama is the commander-in-chief, of course, and he's the one that's commanding all those drone strikes, etc. So he's the guy to target if you're going to protest the actions of the government.
And we've got a situation where I think that the left has traditionally really fallen down on the job, having a great track record of opposing the Republicans when they carry out these sort of policies. But here we are in one of the most solidly democratic cities in the entire country, and yet people shy away from demonstrating against the Democrats when they commit the same war crimes. If you're talking about the occupations of places like Afghanistan or South Asia and so forth, and so we're going to have a real opportunity in the next few days here to actually be the kind of protests in terms of the Democrats when they commit these same atrocities. And one of the places where you can do that is at the beginning of the protests, which is the first night of the Democratic National Convention. People are going to be meeting at the birthplace of Occupy Chicago, LaSalle and Jackson, the heart of the financial district, and then marching over to Obama National Campaign headquarters over on Randolph, just a little bit east of Michigan. And we'll have some more information about some other protests in a little bit. But Ted, how did you were one of the people that initiated this protest. What was going through your minds and the minds of other people you were working with when you started working on this protest?
Well, as you said, when the Republicans are in office, like Bush for 8 years, the entire left was up in arms and protesting all the time and such. Well, Obama gets in, and in essence, when you get below the surface, cosmetics, he's more the same. He's a little better on some issues, but like I say, the big ones, the war machine, handing out trillions of dollars to the billionaires and corporations, tax breaks, etc. It's more the same. So we have to target Obama just as we would have targeted Bush, and that's what we're doing. That's why that's the point of these protests.
And arguably on a series of issues, Obama has been even worse than President Bush.
Sure.
I mean, the drone strikes, for example, are up way over what George W. Bush did. And the United States is arguably occupying more countries than it did under President George W. Bush.
And of course, he escalated Afghanistan way beyond the original invasion force. So,
and in the city where we're facing a situation where the teachers can't get a contract with the Emanuel administration, arguably the Obama administration has been more virulently anti-teacher through its former Board of Ed head here, Arnie Duncan, who is now elevated to the national scale. Arguably, they have been more anti-teacher than even the George W. Bush administration. And on another front, some people who have subscribed to our GLN News will know that I'm going to be going down to Honduras on a solidarity tour organized by La Voz de la Bajos next week at the tail end of the week. And people in Honduras, I would imagine, given that the Obama administration helped the coup leaders in that country, probably think that Obama is the greater evil than the evil that they had experienced under George W. Bush.
And speaking of education, this is a neoliberal administration. Their entire program is privatizing education, pushing charter schools. As you say, going against teachers and teachers unions, basically trying to break them up, I suppose. It's not a good pro-labor or even pro-education administration, both nationally and especially locally. What's his name? Emanuel, was
we try and erase him from our memory.
Was Obama's right-hand man. He was his chief of staff.
That's right.
They're very close. So yeah.
Yeah, and the privatization, I mean, people that are close to the Democrats complain about it when it's coming from a Governor Walker up in Wisconsin, but when it's being rolled out in our own city here, are people blaming the Democrats? Well, they should. And the attack on the Chicago Teachers Union with the privatization to politically connected private charter schools, such as led schools, that should let real union supporters say, there's a problem here with both parties. And in fact, we should mention, while unfortunately we don't have a graphic up about this, on Labor Day, Monday, September 3rd, there is going to be a Chicago Teachers Union rally at Daley Plaza, right downtown across from City Hall. Again, that's 10:30 a.m. Monday, September 3rd. If you believe in labor rights, you should really show up at that rally. I know that a number of occupiers are going to be involved in that. There's also going to be a march for rights, which if you go to the GLN website, we'll have information about that up there. That's www.gayliberation.net. And as in one of the lines from the promotional materials for the week's worth of protests mentioned, President Obama is actually responsible for more deportations of the undocumented than any president since Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
And that's really no accident. I mean,
No.
when there is a Great Recession or a Depression, presidents of both parties respond with deportating and scapegoating undocumented and other people.
Yeah, Obama is no friend of immigrants or the Latino community for that matter. Not really. Again, he's great at projecting a certain look, a certain, but he's not, when you look below his good looks and his nice way of speaking and the rhetoric that he uses, he's no friend to the 99%, whether Latino, immigrant, or American born, whatever.
And as I mentioned, there's a series of actions that are going to be taking place. And let me just get up on our screen here a little bit of information about that. You can go, of course, to the Tuesday, September 4th demonstration, which is one of the main ones that Ted and I have been working on. But also, you can go to this website to find out more information about the whole series of actions. That's tinyurl.com, reject Prez 1%. And we use that language, 1%, President 1%, or we refer to Emanuel's Mayor 1%, because I think more than the party affiliation, it really shows what sides they're on. So we encourage you to check that out. And while we're talking about protests, let's talk a little bit about what kicked off so many things here in Chicago. And that's, of course, the one-year anniversary of Occupy Chicago, which is coming up September 23rd. You can just go to the occupyshy.org website to get involved in all sorts of Occupy activities. But again, the one-year anniversary of Occupy Chicago, which led to so many good things in this city. I think that our anti-NATO protests, of which GLN and many others were involved with, would not have been anywhere like they should have been without not just Occupy Chicago, but Occupies around the country, because Occupy introduced the issue of class into the whole political debate in a way that it had not been before.
Right.
But Ted, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the other issues, civil rights, civil liberties. What's your take on this president versus, say, Mitt Romney, the Republicans, and so forth, and all that?
Well, as everybody should know, Obama is just horrendous on civil liberties. That act that he passed,
NDAA,
exactly,
the National Defense Authorization
basically
Act,
allows him or any other president, for that matter, after he is gone from the scene, to lock up Americans for no given reason, and actually kill them. And as a matter of fact, he already killed an American and his son in Yemen, I believe it was, through a drone strike. So this president is killing Americans without any due process whatsoever. I mean, that is just beyond the pale.
And I think the fact that first George Bush and now President Obama has basically trampled on the rights of people around the world. You can remember when you first heard about Al-Qaeda, they were operating in Africa a little bit. Well, now you've gotten Al-Qaeda of the Maghreb, and Al-Qaeda here, and Al-Qaeda there, and Al-Qaeda affiliate. Just about every country in Eurasia seems to have an Al-Qaeda affiliate, and you have to begin to say, well, what is it about what the United States is doing in terms of its contempt for the rest of the world that people would be prompted to commit these kind of violent acts?
Well, there might be Al-Qaeda groups in many countries, but on the other hand, a lot of these groups that are called Al-Qaeda are just nationalist groups. They're groups that are opposing American imperialism.
Right.
So to a large degree, it's a bogeyman because even where Al Qaeda does exist, it's usually very small. Just a very small number of people. They have support from the local population because countries don't like other bigger countries coming along and invading them and bullying them and killing their people. So that's what's behind that.
Yeah, and the United States troops are now in 130 countries around the world. President Obama has dramatically increased the spread of special forces units operating in many places in Africa, and here we have an African American president doing this. I mean, what's up with this?
We should ask him. But he did spread the militarization of Africa drastically. He created this African, I think it's called.
Africorps, I believe, yeah.
Command, I think it's African Command.
Yeah.
In addition to all the others. And American troops and special operations and CIA and all of those are already in many countries in Africa right now. And he's building up an army, not mainly American forces, but local forces. They're acting as agents, basically, of American imperialism there. So, yeah, that's another thing that he's doing.
Yeah, and I think what I think the great things about the WikiLeaks revelations, which of course are back in the news with Ecuador giving asylum to Julian Assange, is that they showed that these sort of policies, this sort of contempt for local population goes on through administrations, whether Democratic or Republican. I mean, they were tremendously embarrassing to the Obama administration, really shot holes through Hillary Clinton's justifications for the administration. I mean, she's very big on the lofty rhetoric, almost as much as President Obama, about the United States supporting freedom and democracy in the world, when it's clear over and over again they're mostly interested in control of other countries and getting other countries to do their bidding. And the human rights situation in, say, a place like Russia, or a human rights situation in a place like Saudi Arabia, be damned. Over and over again. I mean, in the country that I'm going to be visiting just next week, Honduras, you have a coup that was supported against the opposition of every other country in the hemisphere, a coup that was supported by the United States. The coup government has gotten the legitimacy thanks to that U.S. support. There is a small island nation in the Indian Ocean that was a coup was also supported by the United States under the Obama administration, and in particular because the president of that country had played a leading role in opposing global warming, and of course the United States is a leading propagator of global warming, which leads us to the whole issue of environmentalism. People may remember the protests against the pipeline going through the Plain States. That pipeline has now gotten a backdoor approval, the southern end of it, from the Obama administration. The Obama administration has opened up Arctic drilling. Again, this is something that was supposedly just a crime of the Republicans. And just a few weeks before the BP oil disaster in the Gulf, of course, President Obama announced the opening up of much of the Atlantic seaboard to off-coast drilling, the support of nuclear power, and then of course we have the Japan crisis on those lines. Over and over again, we show, I think, that this president has stood behind corporate interests against the interests of the vast majority of people in this country.
And the planet.
Yeah, and so we are going to be having these protests against not just the Republicans, and it's good that people did that. I myself caught a couple felony counts several years ago for a protest against George W. But we need to protest against the Democrats as well, or we're a bunch of hypocrites. If you truly believe in things like civil rights, if you truly believe in things like gay rights or any number of other rights, then you really need to be opposing both presidents, both parties when they are on the wrong side.
They're two wings of the same party, the property party, the power elite. President Obama is a 1%er. Rahm Emanuel is a 1%er. So they're all, in the same club, and we ordinary people are not in that club, and we have to understand that clearly.
And given that this is the Gay Liberation Network, let me just say a few words about how this president really isn't on the side of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. I mean, there's a big play that's been made about the president saying he's in favor of gay marriage now. That is a flip-flop on his part. In that when he was a state senator, he said he supported equal marriage rights for LGBTs, and then just on the eve of his senatorial election to the U.S. Senate, he came out with a statement saying his so-called Christian values dictated that he opposed it. And he played that line all the way through the constitutional amendment referendum in North Carolina, where he did nothing to oppose that anti-gay constitutional amendment. And the day after it came out, after it was voted on and approved, he then said that he was in favor of equal marriage rights, but he was going to leave it up to the states. We're going to have the states' rights argument about how equal rights should be rolled out. And anyone who knows anything about civil rights knows what a really nefarious concept states' rights is when it comes to anyone's rights, whether it's African Americans, LGBTs, or whomever. And we should remember that many of the worst attacks on LGBTs, such as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, such as the Defense of Marriage, came from Democratic presidents, came from Clinton. And so we need to judge people not by their rhetoric, but what they actually do. And the erasure, for example, of Don't Ask, Don't Tell really arguably only happened because there was a log cabin Republicans suit that was going through from strength to strength to actually junk that. So that's in terms of the LGBT angle, if you will, on why people, I think, should be supporting these demonstrations.
Yeah.
We have time for just a closing comment from you, Ted. If you could tell people in just a few sentences why people should oppose both parties.
These corporate politicians do not have deep principles of any kind except maybe the dollar bill. Or better yet, if there was a $1 trillion bill, it would be the $1 trillion bill. They use cultural issues as tools to make them seem more connected to the general population. But they have one interest, and that is promoting the agenda of the elite, the imperial corporate elite. And that's all of them. Clinton, whether it's Clinton, Bush, Bush 2, or Obama, their differences are very minor.
Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap it up there with just a few announcements here. First, again, the protest next week against the Democratic National Convention are going to be happening here in Chicago. The main one started kicking off on Tuesday the 4th. 5 p.m. LaSalle and Jackson, but of course there are many other protests as well, and we invite you to check those out. You can get all that information at that website right there, tinyurl/rejectprez1%, and we remind people to celebrate 1 year of Occupy Chicago on Sunday, September 23rd. Go to occupyschi.org to get more information about that. And of course, boycott anti-gay corporations that give millions of dollars to oppose equal rights. Boycott Chick-fil-A. You can get more information there at the boycottchick.org website on your screen. And next Gay Liberation Network meeting is always the first Wednesday of each month, 7 p.m. Wednesday, September 5th at the Burger Clark Cultural Center, corner of Sheridan and Granville. And our show next week, tentatively scheduled for Friday, September 21st. You can check out our website for more information about that. And last, we want to thank the people who make this show